Welcome to this episode of Why Pals Tales from the Superyacht Laundry. I am here with Sarah Diggle. She is a fabulous lady. I'm quite well known in the industry. You've been around for a while, but welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So we've been in contact for a little while now, and I've not actually had too many ladies that have gone on to do, I think only one other on the podcast that have gone on to do what you do. So I'm very intrigued to hear your journey and your take on it. But more importantly, are you ready for Christmas?
No, absolutely not. I'm ready for the booze, but I'm not ready for anything else.
You make me feel so much better about myself. Like I'm
it's like all the Chief Stewardess has gone. But my daughter's birthday is in December as well. That's tomorrow, so it's a double whammy for me.
Well, it's not too close to Christmas that you can still do stuff. My husband's birthday is on Friday. I haven't done anything. I just realised yesterday that I hadn't ordered his cake on time.
Oh dear!
So I'm going to have to go to Marks and Spencer's.
A good old Marks and Spencer's. Get him a Colin the Caterpillar.
Do you know you can make a 2-tier cake by shop bought Marks and Spencer's cakes? Found that the other day.
I did buy a pre-made cake on Sunday, and then I just decorated the top.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
And then told my daughter I made it. I didn't look her in the eye. I was like, I totally made it. Yeah, I did.
Yeah. I don't think my husband would want to eat a cake I made, to be honest. No. It's not, I miss having a chef on board. So, yachting. What was Sarah doing before yachting?
I was a dive instructor. I got my ticket in Australia and I started working on a dive boat. And I was the only female on board, so they gravitated me to dive instructor and purser. So that was my...
How did you end up in Australia? Like what?
It was literally the day after I finished my degree. So my degree was interior design. And I always knew I wanted to live abroad. Australia, back then, I think it's still relatively trendy, but back then, you got a year visa. Yep. I ended up staying there for 2 years. And yes, it was amazing.
Did you do the fruit picking then?
I did the fruit picking. I did the emu farms. I did the pineapple farms. I was a hippie, like I didn't wear shoes for a year. I lived in a fire engine that I did out. I had the worst Australian accent ever.
What did you get an Australian accent?
I'm awful. I pick up accents really easily.
So your accent now is the original or not?
This is the original, yes.
This is the original. Okay.
This is the original. But yes, if when I worked on yachts as well, if I was around Americans, I'd start saying, I'm going to take out the trash and aluminum and things like that. And then I'd be like, what are you doing, Sarah?
So you were brave enough. So I did my work holiday visa, which was always gap year.
Yeah.
For Australia, but you did the fruit pit. I looked at it and I was like, there is no way I'm living in a hut.
I did everything. I did everything. I ended up in a place called the Arts Factory in Byron Bay, and I was classed as the PA to the manager, but all I did was answer his emails to girls and wax his surfboard. That was it.
Easiest job ever
in Australia. But I did get my diving ticket, and then I travelled around. I did South Africa for a bit, Japan, and then I ended up in Mallorca, and that was where I first saw the yachts. And I thought,
So I've always been a firm believer, because I've just been to Mets and they're talking about crew retention and how to find these kids. I'm like, go to a hostel in Australia. And you find the ones that come into the end of their visa and they're like, I don't want to go home yet. And it's ripe. They just need some money, basically. Yeah. They're ripe for doing it. Because if somebody in that hostel told me, I'll pay it, do you know what I mean? It was a great option.
No, absolutely. I think currently the yachting market, from things, on the TV, it's bigger than ever. And there's a huge demand for green crew coming in and then being placed is, I suppose it's the attitude that seems to be the problem, and lack of training. Which
is expectation as well.
Yeah, no, it is. But I think just the STCW alone, it doesn't teach you anything about life on board or what's expected. So there's a big...
Or life independently. You know, I don't, you know, coming straight out of home to work on a boat is probably not the best. You do need to have that little bit of independent living.
You do. But I suppose it's tricky though, because you know, you're taught to be independent and live on your own and get a job. And then all of a sudden you're thrown into this environment that's a lot like having this huge family, and you're all sat around in this tiny environment, like a little bit like a goldfish. You know, so it can be quite challenging, I think, in the beginning.
So you're diving, and then what? You saw the yachts going by and thought, "Oh, I can do that."
Yeah. So I was diving three dives a day. My hair was a mess from just diving all the time. My nails were broken. People think it's really glamorous. It's not. I smelled like wee all the time, not from me, but from being around the dive students that would wee in the water when I was training them. And I went down to Wellies, which is still there in Port Alls, and I bumped into this lovely, happy guy who was a captain on a yacht. And back then, you didn't really need any qualifications. It was just if you had personality. So we had some wines, we had a laugh, and by the end, he said, "Do you want a job on a super yacht?" And I was like, "Okay."
Best job interview ever.
Okay. But so I didn't know who the boss was going to be, you know, and it turned out it was a pretty big celebrity. But I was a sole stew, so I didn't have anyone to train me, and it was a real party boat. I mean, literally, I'd have like 5 hours sleep. There was no hours of rest then as well. And the boss was lovely, but you know, it was a big party boat.
So
that was my first boat. Yeah.
I don't know. Like, the thing is, it's like when you don't, they always get people that don't know. I always think if there's people desperate to go into the industry, they'll go as a sole stew, but that's probably the only time they'll agree to do it.
Absolutely. And to be fair, you know, the 10 years that I was on board yachts, and I went straight from that straight into be a chief stew to the next boat. But I always worked on really busy charter boats. You know, I preferred to be busy, and that's, I think, where I thrived. Where maybe others found it a little bit challenging, but I was a bundle of energy. Not so much anymore, but yes, it's
like the rapid pace of it all.
I was like a Duracell bunny, and I could fire on all cylinders. And again, that's slowed down somewhat. Thank God, you know, I couldn't possibly have my chief stew brain at home. I'd drive myself insane. What
was the transition like from sole stew to chief stew? How did you find it?
It was good, because I was walking into an environment where they had SOPs and they had files and they had manuals, and there was none of that on the first boat. But I did learn a lot from the first boat. And the other bonus of the first boat was the boss used to take us out for dinner with him and his guests on a night time. So I thought that was normal. You know, so when I went on to like a 50 metre, that was a 40 metre. When I went on to a 50 metre as chief stew, I was like, "What do you mean we're not going to get taken out for dinner?" Yeah.
What?
But no, I loved it. I've always enjoyed like leading people in a positive way. You know, I've never had any arguments in 10 years with any of the people that I worked with. You know, I worked equally as hard as everybody else. And training, I was always training, and you know, you work to inspire your team, and then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger as you do. The boats get bigger and bigger, and your team get bigger and bigger.
What would you, if there's a girl out there, I think by the time this comes out, and you know, she's going to go to Antibes and might get offered a sole stew, what would your advice be for somebody considering sole stew?
Well, I think when I train in the classrooms, when I meet people face to face, I think there's different yachts that suit different personalities. If someone's very, very young and haven't had much independence or life experience, I recommend they go on a really big boat where they can kind of lose themselves in the crowd. If someone's more mature, kind of 30 plus, or very, very confident, I think going in as a sole stew, as long as you've had experience within hospitality, I think that's a really great dynamic to be part of. And also, it's important to point out that, people think that they want to go on really big boats, but if you want to learn, you'll learn more on a smaller boat, so you'll be doing the lines, you'll be helping the chef, you'll be driving the tender, things that necessarily you probably wouldn't do if you were on a bigger boat. So I think my advice would be, it depends on your personality. But it is tough being a sole stew. Especially if there's, in this day and age now, there's handover folders, there's SOPs to follow. And then you can always get in contact with the owner's rep or PA. But I think there's plus and minuses to it.
So what was your first, because obviously sole stew is good, but like your first experience, like your first boat?
So my first boat as a chief steward, so I was really lucky. In 10 years I did motor and sail. I kind of flipped between the two. So my first boat was a 50-metre sail yacht that was the circumnavigating. So we got to go to some just crazy places, which was amazing. Madagascar, went down the Amazon for 3 months. It did South Africa. It was fantastic. And I think that's, for me, the dynamic of the crew. There was 8 of us and we were really, really close, really close. So I can count on one hand. I've worked on lots of boats and we always got on the yachts, but the ones that really stand out was, I think there's 3 that really stand out for me, and that was one of them. So sailboats.
I imagine it would. That's that itinerary. Oh my God! Like that's a traveller's
But again, the owner used to come on as we were moving, as we were on delivery to the next country. He'd be waiting on the quay with his suitcase, so we didn't really get much time off. So it was really, so we were together all the time. So I did that for a year and a half. But as I say, we were a really, really close crew. I was very lucky. Very lucky.
Very lucky. Can you tell me, if you would like, obviously the travelling is a highlight, but what are the highlights you really, in those first, the beginning years, what you loved about it the most?
The food. The food was amazing. Still miss the food. It's not like it's just a set meal. Normally it's just like platters of salads and healthy fish and this, that and the other. So I miss the food and the camaraderie. It sounds really cheesy, but if you find the right boat, so it's really important when you are being interviewed that you're taking in the vibe as well. Like, can I work with this person? If it's the chief stew, him or her is going to be your boss, not the captain. So it's really important that you feel that you can live in that environment. But the camaraderie, when you get it right, it's just, it's amazing. It's a family from the get-go. And within 6 months, I'm still in contact with everybody that I worked with, which is great. So if I want to go to Australia, I can just go stay with friends, South Africa, New Zealand. But yes, that's in the beginning, it was the camaraderie. And I thought about this before, I spoke to you. I thought, shall I be honest? But the food.
I miss the food. I feel like I deserve to have somebody come into my kitchen and cook for me all the time.
Well, I think it elevates your awareness of, for instance, like mozzarella cheese, versus Sainsbury's versus what the chefs get on board, and you can taste the difference. Or real like fresh produce like the beef tomatoes that go with it. And also the wines, being introduced to these incredible wines. So it kind of turns you into a bit of a wine snob and a food snob, but completely accidentally.
Yeah, ruins most average pubs for life.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, we've got a really, really nice pub where I live, but they don't have any wine.
No.
So they've got all of those flavoured gins. Flavoured gins. I can have a rhubarb gin.
Yeah.
But no wine. Average. Yeah. It turns
when I'm teaching the interior course, part of it is the mixology, and they always say things like, "Oh, can you do a porn star martini?" And I'm like, we don't do porn star martinis on board. We do the classic cocktails, But and then when you do make them the classic way, they're like, "Oh, it's not sweet enough." You're like, "This is the classic way."
Yeah. It definitely changes your palette and your expectations. So one of the downsides of leaving, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any particular lows or challenges that you remember?
I think in the beginning, because I was on busy charter boats, and for anybody listening to this who is thinking about coming into the industry, you really do put the yacht before your family, your friends, your own birthday. So in the beginning, I struggled with Christmas. But again, we were in Jos Van Dyke, in the British Virgin Islands. So, I quickly got over that.
Yeah.
But missing family was, sorry, I've got a thing coming up on my screen. Missing family initially was quite tough. But no, to be honest, I was like a duck to water. I loved it. And I always, obviously, because you get your time off at the end of the season. So it'd be like March and October. And if it was October, if we were in Europe, obviously I'd come home. But sometimes we were in like the Maldives or somewhere. And I'd come home and my family would be like, why are you coming back to the UK when you're in the Maldives? And you're like, well, I miss you. You miss having your feet on the ground.
Yeah, it's one of those unfortunate things where, rotation didn't exist. That was like a whisper. Who had rotation back in the day? So you didn't get much time off, and you did spend majority of it trying to see people, because otherwise that's it. And I suppose in a way, because boats don't generally go anywhere rubbish, you feel kind of, you're working, but you're kind of got the holiday vibe, but you're not on holiday. So I think crew need to remember that there's more to a holiday than the location. It is literally that downtime to relax. And if you do, dual season 3 years in a row, you're gonna be exhausted.
Yeah.
You'll be rich, but you'll be exhausted.
But you say because you said about the finances before, but now when I'm teaching, because you have to look with hindsight, you have to say, if I could have told myself then what I know now. But it can be quite hard to save, because first of all, your palette becomes a lot more extensive. And then plus, when you get off the boat, you want to receive what you give. So you want to go to a nice hotel. You're not going to go stay in a hostel. You want to go stay in a nice hotel with beautiful thread count sheets. You want to be served champagne and great wine. And then plus, the yachts are never in non-expensive locations. They're always very expensive. So it can be quite tricky to balance, your savings versus actually having put. And then also, you want to get off the boat. A lot of people will say in the beginning, oh, I'll just stay in my cabin and I won't spend money. Honestly, you'll be literally clawing at the walls to get off.
Yeah, but also, it's part of the job. You want to... The best part of the job is seeing those locations.
Absolutely.
If you're on board and you're working that much, you want to get off and you want to see those things. Yeah. I mean, finance was not talked about when I was on board. And there's lots of things that I wished that I'd done. But obviously things are changing now and there's a lot more information out there. I mean, I don't have a pension. The whole time I was working on board, I should have had a pension. It's very difficult once you come off to catch up, if you even can.
Agreed.
It's getting ahead. You can still have fun and blow loads of money, but there's a few things to get.
But like you say, I think the resources now. But I guess when you're that young, the word pension is quite depressing. You don't think about it in your 20s.
Yeah, no, you don't. But it's, we've covered it previously. There's a lot of sharks in the water.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are a lot of swindlers out there. They reinvent themselves all of the time, and you get new, wonderful ways to lose money. I think Yossies are more daring when it comes to life in general, and that apparently reflects sometimes in...
But I think as well, now rotation is standard, isn't it? So if you're on rotation, I think, most of the jobs that I kind of see come in, maybe not so much for entry-level crew going in, but it's a lot more prominent on yachts now. So therefore people are obviously thinking, well, I want to buy a home or I want to buy an apartment, so I've got somewhere to come back to. Yeah. And then also you've got 2 months of just spending money.
Yeah. So, you know, it's expensive to be on rotation. I don't think people kind of realise that. I actually know of a few people that don't want rotation. So obviously with guys, they only want the sea miles.
Yeah.
You only got half the time to get sea miles.
Yeah, that's understandable.
So you're on board, living your best life. When can you think back to when it started to change?
Yes, I can recall very vividly. I was on 110 metre. I'd worked for the boss for about 4 years. And I always describe the kind of service, whether it's deck or interior, but more so interior, and the chef as well with the owner, is you have to have like a psychic sense of, you know, you've got to give them what they want before they ask for it. You've got to take in every single detail, you know, the mannerisms, the way they dress, what mood they're going to be in, what kind of excursions you can do for them. And I remember, so he was an Indian guy and he had some Indian press on board, and we were in Goa, and obviously you're not supposed to take pictures, and there was some incredible artwork, you know, on board that was worth, you know, well over 10 million individually. And there was people taking pictures, and I said, please don't take pictures. This is against the policy. And they carried on, and I got really upset, and I kind of had to have a word with myself that this isn't my boat. You're getting yourself upset, you know, for no reason. And I had my break, and I went ashore, and I had a big think about things. And I thought, I've lived in uniform for 10 years. I don't know what kind of clothes I like to wear. I know everything about the owner, but I don't know anything about myself. And then that was when the penny kind of started to drop, that I suppose in a sense, as fantastic as it, oh my God, I had a 10-year run, you know, I'd lost myself along the way. So yeah, that's where it started. It is a realisation, and also the realisation you can avoid it as much as you want, but this is not forever. There's going to have to be something else. And the first probably 5 years, you're kind of like, yep, you know, I'll think about it later kind of thing. Yeah. But it is going to happen. And like what we said when we first obviously came on this recording, your body starts working against you as well. So this people-pleasing pleasure of a lady becomes less tolerant. And creating space to maybe think about what you want. You know, you become aware of the time that's being passed. It starts to tick, and you can feel it. I think that the final, I did, because I had an apartment in south of France. So when I left boats after 10 years, I spent 15 years in south of France, living there. And when I got off the 110 metre, I did take a job shoreside that was office-based in Monaco. Very glamorous company, amazing people. But oh my God, to go from running around on a charter boat to literally sitting on my bum for 8 hours, I was the most annoying person in the office. Paper clips, I'd be twiddling with things the whole time, I'd be rocking. So I just thought, how can you sit in front of a computer screen, you know, for 8 hours a day? I used to make excuses to go to the toilet. So I just thought, oh my God. And then I was commuting as well. So nothing to do with the company, but it was way, I hadn't done a healthy transition. I'd kind of gone straight from a super yacht that was busy charter, then to go into that environment. So I lasted about 4 months. And then I thought, right, well, I can't go back to a charter boat. I want to have something that's gives me some chance to be at home. So I lived in Antibes at the time. So I took a private yacht that was based in Monaco. The owner lived in Monaco. She would have the occasional soiree on a weekend, but other than that, we'd get weekends off and evenings off if she wasn't on board. So that was my transition, and that worked for me. I got to wean myself
a little bit. It was kind of easing you out a little bit.
Yeah. But it took me a year. It took me a year until I felt ready. And then, you know, the classic thing was I wanted a dog.
Yeah, I was a dog. I got a dog. I was the same.
I got 2 just to make sure. I got 2.
Yeah, I got a dog. Actually, a friend of mine, she messaged me yesterday. She's got herself a fur baby. She's gone cat.
Yeah.
Because she keeps dipping in, like each summer she'll do a few trips. So she's kind of, that's what you do.
I don't think people realise, when you do get a pet, it's such a big commitment, because that's you saying, I'm never going to go back to working on board. However, in saying that, which I'm sure we'll talk about a bit later, 28 years is it now? But I've always stayed in the industry, and that's a really pertinent thing, as you have. There's a lot of things shoreside that you can do where, you're still going on board, you're still saying hi, you're still socialising, you're still interactive within the arena, but you're not doing the sleeping in a cabin. And
you kind of, it's stepping away, and it makes sense in a lot of ways. Like, to step away and not do anything at all related in the industry is, well, I imagine it's pretty tough. I've always stayed connected, because when I was trying to make my life on land, my husband was still working in the industry, so we're still connected.
Yeah.
But it's like what you said, not thinking about the fact that you took a job in an office and was sat still. Like, the transition of getting your mentality into, just like the transition of going into a yacht and being on your feet and being on the go all of the time, it works the other way. And I think that's one of the things where women end up being really hard on themselves.
Yeah.
That's where they're kind of the knocks of the confidence start, which ends up being, like you said, a bit of a yo-yo. You end up looking for a job that might be slightly easier to get used to.
Yeah.
I mean, what was the community like in Antibes?
Pardon?
What was the community like in Antibes? There's quite a few ex-crew in Antibes.
It was just amazing back in the day. We were a family. I mean, there's still some people part of that family that are still there, that I still go to see. But it was fantastic. I mean, it's a lot busier now than what it was back then. I mean, the winters, like December, was always my favourite time of the year, because all the tourists had gone home. It was like brilliant sunny days, but cool. All the mountains were snow covered. But no, the camaraderie, and everybody worked on boats. And the funny thing is that, so I brought this up with a friend recently, because I found out that her husband is a chief engineer on a yacht for the guy that I used to work for. He actually pinched me off a boat and gave me this amazing job, like a Cinderella story. I ended up being a guest on his boat. But he's worked for him for 4 years. But when you meet other yachties, you don't say, what boat do you work on? You don't really ask. You don't ask who the owner is. You don't, it's just like, oh yeah, my boat this, my boat that. But yeah, it was fantastic back in the day. This was back in the day when, what was it called? There was that bar on the corner.
The Keys.
So there was Tequila Bar that was now Drinkers Club. And then round the corner, it's now a fancy wine bar, but it was like a South African couple, Mark and Yo owned it. And it was like a sports bar. But yeah, I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
It has. I mean, Antibes changed dramatically. Highly recommended to go there. It's a lot prettier and safer than what it was back in the day. But it's still, it's still the beating heart. So how long did you end up working weekends for before?
Well, I was a year on board that yacht. And it was slightly longer than I anticipated, but again, the crew were amazing, absolutely amazing. And the owner was good friends with Prince Albert, and we struck a very, very firm friendship. So it was a nice balance. It was a really nice balance. And then on that yacht, they decided to do a random charter. And these charter guests came on board, and the main principal was a Swedish guy. And I could see from the preference sheet that it was going to be my kind of charter. It was just bonkers. The stuff he was asking for was bonkers, but good bonkers, good sense of humour, when you come across someone who's wealthy but they've got a great sense of humour, you know, it's quite rare that they enjoy their money. And he came on board again. We got on like a house on fire, and he offered me a job. This was in the July, but I didn't finish the season until the October, which was my year. And he was stood on the quay. He was stood on the quay waiting for me in Monaco, and took so that he gave me a land-based job. And then the following year, he wanted me to organise the same yacht that I was chief stew on that I'd left. I was to organise the Monaco Grand Prix. He wanted to be on the Tiki. I was going to be a VIP guest, and I had a $2.5 million budget.
Nice.
For a 5-day trip. And I was like, holy moly, mother of God. How on earth I've gone from a trip? But it was the boat that I was the chief stew on. So you can imagine, you know, some of the same crew were there. You know, so I'm wanting to go in the galley and help the chef, and wanting to help do the washing up. And yeah, it was odd. And it's a story that you don't hear very often. That's
a decent party budget. Whoosh. Although it doesn't go that far in Monaco, does it really?
No. But he you know, I'd organised, he wanted all the women to have Dior dresses and all the men to have Dolce & Gabbana suits. So they closed the shop for us, and we went down. He was like, go to Chanel, everyone pick a handbag. Go to Dior,
I never get invited to parties like that. It's rubbish.
I know. Well, it was only that once. There was only that once. But yeah, so that was how I kind of made the transition. And to be honest, yeah, I worked for this guy for a year, and he was amazing and he was generous. But I just got so tired of champagne and the clubs and the blah blah blah. I just wanted to settle down a bit. So I bought a 1974 VW camper van, did it up, handed my notice in, and I went travelling around the wine regions, around Bordeaux.
Oh, that sounds awful.
Myself. Oh, sorry, my dog's barking.
That's okay. It sounds awful. So that was a holiday?
Pardon?
Was that a holiday?
It was just taking time out. I wanted to just step away from all the glitz and the glam and the champagne. I've still to this day got a thing about champagne. So it was just constant. So part of my job was he wanted me to create a party atmosphere. So I always had to be this. It's a bit like being a chief stew on charter. I always had to be this happy-go-lucky person. And I just wanted to just
not
be a bum for a while, have like a bottle of beer or something. But it was fantastic to go around like Champagne region and Bordeaux in October, November. It was just incredible. And then I started working for a yacht management company in Antibes.
Yacht management.
Yeah.
That's one of the positions that's pitched to us all. Oh, you could become a recruiter. Well, it's management. It's not as easy as people think to get into.
Oh my God, no! I mean, when I was on board yachts, I always wondered, what is the captain doing? The first officer seemed to be doing all the charts, and then I became a yacht manager, and it really opened my eyes to how technical and how much paperwork is. If they're ISM compliant, ISPS. It's in abundance. It's in abundance. So it really opened my eyes to just how technical a captain's job is. And then what did I do next? It makes me sound like I'm 250 years old. If I actually wrote my full CV out, you're like, dear God.
Well, you don't. Nobody wants to hear about yacht management companies, do you?
No. Well, actually, I do work for one now on the side, and they're amazing. They're absolutely amazing. And funnily enough, the managing director used to be my second officer on the boat in Monaco.
Oh wow!
So we go back a long way, yeah. But it's
3 degrees of separation. Literally.
I know. And we've got our Christmas party on Friday, and I can't wait.
Yacht management, obviously your experience, the land-based side, life in South France is lovely.
It is lovely, yes. Yeah.
So what happened next?
The management company that I worked for, I'd been doing a bit of training. This is before Ayami and Guest existed. So I used to do a lot of onboard training for the fleet that we had. So I'd go on board, I'd help train the girls up. And then that became a bit of a side, not going to use the word hustle because it's not a hustle, but a passive income. So I used to fly to the Isle of Wight. I used to teach at Flying Fish, and then for 5 days, train interior crew, come back over to Antibes. And then I'd do something called an orientation day where it was deckhands that were qualified from the UK, from Flying Fish, and the interior team. And then I used to take them around Antibes, introduce them to the agents, where to go, where not to go. And this little nugget of a business started to evolve. And then I was asked by the Crew Academy to be a full-time trainer. So I went there and I was there for about 5 years I started off at kind of management level, training chief stews on their first position. And then it became all these different departments. And then Ayami and Guest evolved. So I've known Joey right from the very beginning, Joey Mean. And we really, really lobbied hard for the Ayami Guest program. It wasn't Ayami then, it was just the Guest program to be taken seriously, because there was just nothing for interior crew. You step off a boat and there was nothing to go to an agency with and say, oh, hey, I've just worked on 110 metre with celebrities and private jets and choppers and bodyguards, but you've got no qualification. So that's where I got into the training. So I've been training now for about 15 years, 18 years. Lose count. Marbles are starting to go.
If you're just listening to this, she looks like she's 102. No, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't look like you've had the experience that you had.
Yeah, 250 years old. I think I've been very lucky, but it is a great industry. You know, if you've got yachting experience, there are so many things that you can do afterwards. Whether you stay with the owner and you work in one of their residences, or as a PA, or the yacht management, or the recruitment. It's always baffled me how some recruiters they've not worked on a boat before, which I always find a little bit odd. I don't mean it in a bad way, because it must be really hard for them to do a lot of research to figure out how to talk to the yachties, what kind of lingo is used. But it's I always feel like it's better if it's someone who's worked on a boat before.
Yeah. How's training evolved since you started?
Oh God, it's evolved enormously. I remember, my dog's barking again. I remember when the MCA recognised us. So we're now allowed to say that we are recognised and affiliated by the MCA. Stupid little dog. Sorry.
He's angry at something.
I think it's just somebody at the door. But yeah, so when that happened, it was about, 8 years ago. I did the most unladylike cartwheel. Bearing in mind, I'd not done a cartwheel since I was about 7. But yeah, I was so proud of what we've achieved. And now to be a trainer, you have to have had 10 years experience as a head of department. You have to write your own coursework, but it has to hit the standards and the bullet points of what we've all put together. And then you have to be accredited yourself, and then the place where you're training has to be accredited. So it's a very professional process. It's a lot like the deck department. And Joey's kind of done that, I think, on purpose, because Joey's background is deck and engineers. So it's very professional. It's a standard. So anybody that's a guest trainer, we all have to hit a certain standard. So if you're getting whether it's interior crew or a deckhand or whatever, if they've done some guest training, you know exactly what subject matter they've covered.
It's it has progressed. I mean, the interior's always been a bit of a conundrum, really.
Yeah.
Because, obviously your experience, you didn't have any training.
Sorry, say that again. I've got my dog woofing in. Welcome to life ashore.
There's that dog situation that we all
well, rather than your radio going off every 2 seconds, Sarah, Cherise, go ahead. Got barking instead. Hopefully you can drown her out, but if not, I do apologise, audience.
Interior and trying to get, obviously, more recognition for the job that we do has always been a bit of a conundrum, because you don't need any qualifications to get a job.
No.
You know, you just need to be a certain type of individual to succeed.
I think it's personality match, depending on the yacht. If it's a quiet yacht, if you're too loud. But also, in saying that, as a chief stew, if you know that someone's done an interior course, you know that they understand the basics of laundry, service, housekeeping, you know, what the guests are going to be like. So if it was a case of having one CV of someone that's just done the STCW versus a CV of someone that's done the STCW and an interior course, most of the time they go for the second. Mm-hmm. But you're absolutely right. I mean, there's things like the purser courses, they're fantastic with Angie Wallace. And that's a good 2 weeks. That's a good 2-week course, but that's kind of obviously your accountancy, ISPS, birthing, travelling, visas. So it's all when you get the certification, it's all things that you can take shoreside as well.
Yep.
Itchy nose. You're going to sneeze.
I thought I was going to sneeze. No, it's always been a bit of a conundrum for how women, you know, how you get any recognition whilst on board and then translate it into ashore, which is, you know, a big mystery. And I've literally only just interviewed a woman that's gone in at exec level ashore, in hospitality as well, which, you know, I've spoken to a lot of women, so she's unusual, because it's really difficult to translate it. Yeah. You know, but
I think that there's a big, there's a few companies in London, and again, I was just really lucky to get directed in the right direction. But there was one thing that I did find was quite easy to be offered work. I didn't take it because I wanted to have a dog, but it was being a PA to celebrities. So I was put forward for quite a bit of work for celebrities. And again, you know, when you say it out loud now, especially the people that I was offered the job, you know, you'd have like 7 interviews and you get offered the job, and I turn it down simply because, you know, I didn't want to travel anymore, and I wanted a dog.
You wanted a dog.
Yeah.
Wanted a dog. So where are you based now?
In Yorkshire.
So what happened in France? You were just like, well, I can't eat any more baguettes. I'm done.
No, I love South France, and my best friends still live there. The expat community I loved. I had my daughter out there, but I wanted to divorce my husband, and this is a little bit of nugget of information. But in France, if you're taken to court by the father of your child, if they work in France, you can't leave. You can't leave if they go to court and win. You can't leave. And I knew I wanted to have the support of my family. And I still now have friends who are stuck in France who have since remarried, have other kids, and they're from Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, and they have to stay. They have to stay in France. So
What do you mean they have to stay in France? Why?
Not allowed to leave. If the father of the child, the first child that they've had together in the first marriage, if they reside in France and they take them to court, the court will generally rule that you have to stay.
So you can't take your child away. You've got to
take your child away. So and again, I was, I've been 7 years back, but still, small things about the UK still really excite me. Like rain, wearing Wellingtons, and going to country pubs. And the countryside here is gorgeous. I mean, I had a bird table. I lived in Valbonne after Antibes, and I had a bird table outside. And for 7 years, I just had wood pigeons and warthogs on a night time. Literally, that's it. And you come back to the UK, and for all its bad weather, etc., the wildlife here is amazing. The pub life is amazing.
It has been a bit weird this year. We had no bugs.
Yeah.
There was no bugs. Yeah. There was no butterflies, a lot of bugs. Really,
we had
really
snow
odd.
2 weeks ago. And then, the weather can be intense. And also it's quite a struggle not being around other yachties. So I only really, because I work from home now, and then I've got my online course, which obviously is the passive income. So it's when, when I go into the office, I turn into that irritating, like really excited, over the top, because I'm around people. So it is hard, when you tell people and they'll go, wow, like what is that? But again, people do moan about below decks, etc. But it has given people, the general public, an insight into some of what, I'm not saying it's accurate. There's many things about it that isn't, but it does give them some insight into what life is like on board. So I always say to people, if you want to know what I did, watch a bit of that. It's not completely true.
No, the standards hopefully are a lot higher.
Oh God, yeah. And 3-day charters. 3-day charters is something that you only can dream about.
Yeah, no, they're not. It's it's a taster, but it's there's a lot more to it than
absolutely. I think things like radio jargon, how to use a radio, what happens before guests come on board.
So before we finish up, I've got 2 questions. The first one is, speaking to your younger self, or, an 18, I don't know, how old were you when you got 20-something, if you'd done your degree?
I started yachting at 24.
24, okay.
24, and then I got off at 34, and then I was shoreside.
So if you could talk to a 24-year-old Sarah, or talking to 24-year-old Sarah, or any individual that's kind of considering it, what would your 3 bits of advice be?
Don't take yourself too seriously. You've got to have fun. So, the first thing would be to not take yourself too seriously. Just try and have some fun. Second, I do wish I'd saved more. I really do wish I'd saved more. And third, somebody knew that, you've got to have really thick skin, but you've got to find the boat that's right for you. And you just know when you're in your interview, when you're walking around the boat. I think there's not really any middle ground. You either find the boat that's amazing for you and they become your family and friends, versus if you're in an environment where, you've got to do your research, ask questions like, what's the nationality of the owner? Obviously, you don't ask the name, but that could be pertinent to life on board. So if it's a dry boat, for instance, they might say that the crew are not allowed to drink. If all the crew are Italian and you don't speak Italian, you've got to ask these certain questions to make sure that your environment fits what you're looking for.
Yeah. It is important, but you learn, I think, trial and error with a lot of those stuff. If you don't ask that question in the interview, you'll soon remember the next time.
Yeah.
But I
always say,
can be avoided.
The build of the boat, the nationality of the owner, and the nationality of the crew. Yeah. I think that's really important.
It's 5 things, isn't it? My captain used to say 5 things. So boat, owner, itinerary, salary.
But again, with the salary, when I used to interview people, if they asked me the salary kind of straight away, I'd be really put off. So I always say, look, if they haven't brought it up by the end of the interview, just say, is the salary paid in dollars or euros? And it's a really good way to prompt people without knowing what's the salary.
Yeah, it's like 5 things. If you've got 4 of the 5, you can probably make it. 3 of the 5, I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't take it otherwise. Okay, so we've come to the natural end of our conversation, but I always ask each guest if you have a crazy story that's out of NDA and you can tell the listeners of the mad stuff that goes on board. Obviously, no names, but, if you've got a crazy story.
I've got loads, but I'm just trying to think of which things I can say without it being censored. So there was a particular charter guest that came a few times to the yacht and had really strange idiosyncrasies. So like every 3rd button on his shirts had to be done up. We had to fold his shirts. He didn't want them hanging up. He didn't like miniatures for toiletries. We had to get middies. He didn't like big. He didn't like small. We had to get middies. The boat was all red and yellow, like the cushions. He didn't like those colours, so we had to buy cushion covers before he came on board. So that aside, you know, and he would often come on board by himself, and it was like $1 million a week, and it was this enormous boat. But it was the women that came on board. The women that came on board, and you know, you think kind of Julia Roberts, Pretty Woman type thing, and these women were just absolutely beautiful, incredibly well educated, and would often end up in the pantry with the crew, kind of gossiping about what was going on. And it was just, I mean, I can't repeat it, but yes, it was eye-wateringly shocking. Yeah, it was eye-wateringly shocking. Yeah. But yeah, he was probably the most difficult charter guest that we had, just for the really weird idiosyncrasies. And I do find that a lot of the charters that we did, you know, people with money, it sometimes it can make them go a little bit odd. It's like just for the sake of being difficult, they'll be difficult. Oh, no, sorry, another one as well. We remember we pulled up into Saint-Tropez, and his wife was on board with the women on the top deck. Everybody knew about what was going on, and she had broken her little nail, and we were just dropping anchor. We were going to go to Club Cinq-on-Cinq, so I'd arranged for a nail technician in a tent on the beach, all ready to do her nails, but she refused to get off the boat in case she was photographed with a broken pinky finger nail. So I had to organise the Monaco chopper to come and pick her up, take her to a nail salon, come back again.
What? All the way?
Her pinky finger, yeah. And I think that's a real testament of being good crew. Is inside you're doing that, you're going, what? No way! Like, but you have to go like, okay, that's no problem at all.
Well, we're yes people. It's your money. We can make anything happen. As long as you're willing to pay the bill, we can make it happen.
Exactly.
Like I've had guests, the twin babies could only drink Highland spring water.
Yeah.
That's
and
it.
Caviar, and they give like the one year old caviar.
Highland spring water, made from Scotland, brought out of the ground in Scotland. It's not available very readily in the south of France.
No.
So you have to have a private jet.
Yeah, literally, it was a private. And then another one. I'll give you this last one, but this was in St. Bart's. It was March, so we were out of season. We were supposed to be coming over to the Med. A lot of the shops had closed, and we had a very busy charter. It was 2 weeks charter as well. And the young child that they had was, I think he was turning 5 years old, decided that he wanted to have a Halloween party. And of course, on the yachts, you don't just do things in halves. You have to get like full-blown skeletons and ghouls, and the whole boat has to be decorated. I went ashore. There was nowhere that sold Halloween apparel, and they wanted entertainers. There was nowhere open. So we ended up having to hire a private jet, pick up entertainment, and who came with decorations and skeletons and witches and ghouls on the private jet, which cost a hideous amount of money. And then all night the crew, as you'll have done this yourself, all night the crew were decorating. Thankfully, I dressed up as a witch because I looked dreadful. I had bags in my eyes and all sorts. And then this little kid came upstairs. We were like, surprise. And the kid just went, I don't like it. And you just, it's moments like that you're just going to go, yeah.
How do you not drop kick them off the boat? Like,
well,
obviously.
Yeah. Exactly. But then you just think, what a waste of money. It was like 30 grand just for this tiny
to waste, and they will continue to waste it over and over and over again. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate it. And your crazy stories. I might tap you up for some anonymous ones a bit later on. We can read that later.
I've got a few. That's why I was caught off guard there, but I do have a few.
Thank you very much for coming on. All your contact details for your training will be in the bio below. ladies and gentlemen, if you've been listening to this podcast, we do have loads of others for you to enjoy from other incredible ladies. I haven't done a boy yet, but I'm not saying I'm never going to do a boy, but I haven't done one yet. If you, continue to watch this space. There'll be more episodes, and join us next time. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you.
We'll catch you next time. Thank you. Bye. Thank you.